Good morning, everyone. This morning we're going to talk a little bit about printing, just a basic overview of microstation printing in general, and hopefully that will spark some questions, and we'll get to those as we go along. Topics we're going to cover, we'll talk a little bit about print drivers, pen tables, print styles, single sheet printing, print organizer, and Sheet Navigator. So you can see we're going to zip through all of the topics as just an overview, and then try to answer some questions. So we'll begin with talking about print drivers. Basically, there are different types of print drivers available, and depending on what you're wanting to accomplish, you can, there's certain print drivers that are better for some tasks than others. So I tried to list out a little table here of a few different types of the common drivers and what they're useful for. Basically, PostScript, it's what I would recommend for paper printing, because you can go in, you can define paper sizes. It allows you to I guess, when you select the sheet, it comes into scale and stuff like that. It requires the least user input because you can define all those properties in the driver. I guess one drawback is that it must be assigned to a printer or a port. So if you've got 4 printers around the office, you would have to have either 4 separate print drivers to print to each of those, or you would have to have a port defined and then a way to remap that port to the different printers. System drivers, they're also called like Windows drivers. System drivers can be used for printing to paper as well. If you don't have a PostScript printer, that would probably be the best one to use there for that. Basically what the system drivers allow you to do is access any print devices you have available in your Windows devices and printers. So anything that I had actually attached to my machine or whatever, then I could print to that through the system driver. And you'll notice when you're using a system driver, there'll be a little Windows icon available on the print dialog that kind of indicates that it's a system driver. Just trying to reorganize my screen here so I can see if we got any questions coming in. The disadvantage of using the system drivers and why I don't really like those is because you must enter a scale for each print. In the driver itself, you can't define a paper size. You define a form type, like a letter or a tabloid or whatever, and it doesn't allow you to define like 10.6 by 16.5 as the page size, which is also the page size of a FDOT sheet border. So that's how we control the scale with PostScript, and we don't have that ability with system drivers. HPGL, RTL, those are recommended for like large format roll plots, with rasters. They'll handle those best. And then of course PDF is used to create a single or a multi-page PDF document. Some of the drivers we provide. Now these are really just examples. We set them up and try to configure them as well as possible. With just general information, not knowing everybody's specific printers and IP addresses and stuff like that. So just a few that we deliver here, like the HP 5000 is a PostScript driver. It's easy. It's probably the one you'd want to use if you got a PostScript printer you want to print to in your office. You can just open that up, rename it to whatever your printer is, and then define the share in there to print to that device. The HP 1055 and the HP 1055C, those are just for some PostScript roll plots. You can tell it's been a while since we bought printers around here just by the names of the printers. That's the old HP 1055 black and white version, and then we've got a color version as well. The FDOT printer PLT CFG is basically just a copy of the background printer, or I'm sorry, I was reading a question here. It says somebody's hearing some background music. Can you look into that, James? The FDOT printer PLT CFG is a Windows system driver. It's just basically a copy of the Bentley printer driver, and we've gone in and customized, added the FDOT line styles and pins and weights and pen stroking and so forth. We also have a black and white and a color version of the HP GL RTL, and we've got a black and white and color version of the FDOT PDF driver. And just a note here, all of these drivers are capable of doing raster printing. You know, your image is, if it's not printing, you know, you want to go and check the level that the image is on to ensure it's on a non-plotting level. That's kind of a common problem, and we'll talk about that again a little bit later. So we talked about the different types of drivers. To edit a driver, basically you would go into the print dialog and then edit. Let's just go ahead into MicroStation. So you'd go into the print dialog. I'm just going to hit Control key on my keyboard. It'll bring up the print dialog on my other screen, of course. So I'll drag it over here. And then to edit a driver, you'd basically say File, Edit Printer Driver Configuration. And you're going to get something that looks like this. It's the PLT CFG files are in XML format, and you would really want to edit it using this interface instead of the old notepad method that we use with the PLT files. So the options that I wanted to point out here, though, are for PostScript drivers and PDF drivers. So with PostScript drivers, I said earlier that you need to go in and define either a port or a shared printer name, and to do that you would select and edit the printer driver. Then you would expand the default print file name field and enter server, you know, / your server name / your shared printer name. Or if you were printing to a port, like I say, you could use LPT3, LPT2, whatever you want to use for the port that you might have a printer map to. So that's really the main thing you need to worry about with the PostScript drivers. With a PDF driver, you don't need to worry about necessarily defining an output device, but it does have several other properties that no other drivers have. And I just wanted to point those out here, that if you did want to make it say a georeferenced PDF to where you could get lat long off your PDF, then you would have to come in to the driver properties field of the PDF driver. You would have to, there's an option here for enable optional content. You would have to turn on the enable optional content, and then you could print the optional content. That will also enable the, give you the ability to enable the georeferencing, the measuring, and all of these other advanced features of a PDF driver. Now we turn those off by default just to help with speed, but you know, if at some point you want to just create one of those, all you got to do is, you know, save this as another name, turn on the options that you want to print, and then use that one for those special situations. Pen tables. Pen tables are really useful when customizing output. They will allow you to print or to override the display properties at print time. So you could use level overrides for that, of course, but you know, with level overrides you got to go in and set those with all your files and everything, and then you got to make sure they're turned on in your print attributes. With a pen table, you can go in and basically set up the same overrides and then just apply it to any file or sheet that you want to. So that's really its strength. You can do things like that. You can also, when printing the paper, you can I guess emulate the use of transparencies by setting like a shading for a shape and setting the priority to the background so it shows up behind all the text and everything, and you get basically the same effect when you print it to paper that you would have if you use transparencies. And I guess the big reason why I would recommend that is because if you print using transparencies to paper, you have to set the rasterized option on in the print dialog. So if we was coming over here and we were going to print something with transparencies, to enable those transparencies in printing, I'd have to turn on this rasterize option, and that just it makes a bigger print file, and it takes longer to submit that print file to the printer. So you know, if you've got 100 sheets that you're printing, it's just going to really stretch out the time it takes to print those 100 sheets as compared to using a pen table to do the same thing. So you could turn off elements, you can change the color, weight, symbology, basically all the kind of things you can do with overrides you can do with the pen table, and it's just applied at print time. Pen tables are real easy. It's kind of like you know, the MicroStation element select thing. You can go in and basically select elements and then apply an output action to those. So when you're editing a pen table, it's just really three steps. You create a section, whether it's new, you would edit, insert section, and give it a name. And that name is really just a container for the properties you're going to set on the element selection criteria and the element output actions. So you would select that. Second, you would come in, define the elements selection criteria, and then you would define the output actions to apply to that criteria. So it's real simple. Like I said, just insert a section, basically edit, insert section, give it a name. You can order those so it'll apply certain properties before it comes back and applies other properties. So you can go in and get all that set. Once you have that set, you would select the one you want to modify, and then you would define the selection criteria for that. And you can select by element type, files, color, weights, styles, levels, class, basically anything you could use to select a MicroStation element you can define here in the pen table. And then finally you have the define output actions. And then basically once you have your selection criteria defined, so it'll go in and grab the MicroStation elements you want, you would define the action you want to apply to those elements. So then you could go in and turn the fill on or off, set the priority to bring it forward or back, set your screening or transparencies, change colors. This is where you could do some shading, things like that. So we've got a question here. So we don't have an exact WYSIWYG on printing. The screen may not match the print, and that's true. if you're using pin tables, but it's also true if you're using level overrides. If you don't go in and turn that property on in your display attributes, but you have it forced on in your print, you may not get what you're seeing in MicroStation that way either. It's something you've got to manage. Okay, so that's we've touched on print drivers, we've touched on pin tables. We'll talk a little bit now about print styles. And print styles basically allow you to define and reuse name collections of properties. So you could use a print style to select that print driver or to select that pin table we just talked about. Excuse me. You can also define, paper sizes, fence definitions. This is what we use to go in and locate the sheet borders for you. And they can be used in both the print organizer and in the single sheet printing dialog. It makes it real quick and easy to print from that dialog as well. An example of that is like we've got a sheet here. If I wanted to just open up this and just go settings, apply print style, and select that, see how it'll go in and fence my sheet. Now in this case I've got two sheets in here, so it's going to just grab the first sheet that was placed in the file. But it does go in and fence it. You notice when it fences it, the scale's already set for me, everything's already predefined, so all I really need to do is apply a print style and hit the print button and create my output. So you see what I mean about speeding up. I don't have to go in and set any of those properties. So where are those print styles stored? Ideally they're going to be stored in a DGN library, and when we deliver the FDOT print styles, they get delivered in a DGN library up on the server or on your standalone workstation named FDOT Print Styles.dgnlib. And we also have configuration variables in there that will look for a file named custom printstyles.dgnlib in that same directory, and if there's a file in there, it would just with that name, it would just automatically make those print styles available for everyone as well. So that's what you would use if, say, you're customizing print styles for your office. I would recommend creating a file named this, put it in this directory. This is FDOT 2010. You could do it in FDOT SS2. We use that same logic for all the different versions. So as long as you put it in that directory and it's got that name, when your users open MicroStation, they will have your custom print styles available to them. A user also has the ability to create their own print styles, if they don't have access to the server, and they could just put those in the workspace prefs directory with that name and it should find them. And then of course you could define project specific print styles and set those up in your PCF file to automatically load as well. So there's various different ways you can create those. One of the common mistakes with print styles and where they're stored at is when people are first getting started working with print styles is they'll start creating print styles right in the DGN file they're in. So if they're working in, say, Plan RD01, and they say, well, I want to set up a print style for this that will do my shading for my topo files and all of that, and they just create a new print style right there. Well, if you create it there, it's only going to be available in that design file. If you went to Plan RD02, that print style wouldn't be available for use. And that's the strength and why you would want to use it in these DGN libraries, because that makes it available in all files as long as you're in that workspace. And we've kind of already done this. You've seen how with the single sheet printing you can go in and quickly apply a print style and it sets all your properties. There's been a couple other changes to the print dialog you might have noticed in Select Series 3. They've renamed the pen tables menu to resymbolization, and they've added a couple options in there for design scripts. Now, design scripts are the old interplot, iplot scripts similar to pen tables. So, you know, if you've got a history with interplot, then maybe you're more comfortable working with design scripts, and you could use those as well. One other change you might have noticed is that before to attach a pen table, you'd have to go, you know, pen table attach and then select it up here off the menu. Now they've just got a field down here at the bottom where you can attach by browsing to a pen table, or just detach a pen table by clicking on the red X. So those are a few of the enhancements to the print dialog in Select Series 3. As I said, if you use the print styles dialog in the print dialog, there's no need to place a fence, no need to select a print driver, no need to select the pen tables, no need to, you know, set any or adjust any of your display settings. You can define all of that in the print style. And as we get to talking more about print styles, you'll see how you would leverage this and maybe create some specifically for the print dialog that apply the print driver, to where if you're in Print Organizer, maybe you don't want to apply the print driver. So we've got another question here. I use the FDOT printer PLT CFG to print. The only problem is I don't have the scale position, and that's kind of what I was referring to. We'll just take a quick look at that. So I'm using an FDOT PDF driver here, and I'll show you kind of what the differences in those are. So if we go to Edit Printer Driver Configuration, one thing you'll notice in PDFs and HPGL, RTL, and PostScript, basically all the drivers except the printer driver, the system driver, is that you have the ability to define page sizes. And I can define specifically excuse me, what page size to look for. So I define 10.6 by 16.5 as the overall paper size, which just so happens to match the width and the height of a FDOT print border. So if I have that defined using FDOT print borders, and I have the maximize option on, it's always going to come up to scale. It doesn't really matter what the scale is. It could be 40, it could be 100, it could be 50, whatever it happens to be, it's just going to come into scale. But if I select a driver, and to select the driver, I'll just use another print style. So I'll select Apply Print Style, and I will select the Windows printer. And you'll notice that it attaches the FDOT printer PLT CFG. And you can see there it's got the printer icon I was telling you about. This is how you could select whatever Windows devices you have available. But what it doesn't give you is the ability to define a paper size. So anytime you use this, it's going to come out as some odd ratio based on what paper you have selected. That's just the way those work. There's not really anything you can really do about that other than go in and set that. Now there is a setting in the preferences that will allow you to go in and allow paper size editing, and it will give you some other options down here that you can then use to override things. That'll give you a little bit more power to work with that if that's the driver you need to use. But you can see why just from that I recommend using the PostScript drivers for that. It just makes it easier on the users. Okay, so we've talked about that. Now we'll move into Print Organizer. We're kind of ripping through here. Hopefully y'all are coming up with some questions for us to try different things. Print Organizer. Some of the best practices to use when using Print Organizer are make sure all your sheets will be printed as expected with the same print driver. So basically all the sheets in your P set are going to get printed with a single PLT CFG file. You can't define like one print driver for your, say, key sheet, another one for your plan sheets, and then yet another one for, say, your cross sections. In Print Organizer, everything in the preset is going to get processed using a single PLT CFG file. So you want to make sure all of those will print as expected with that. Make sure your print styles and the print driver do not set the same properties, or one's just going to wind up overriding the other, and you'll be trying to figure out which one's causing the problems. So if we look at that, you can set things in your print drivers. If we go back to File, and we'll just edit that print driver again. You can set things in your print drivers for, let's see what we've got here. One is you can attach pin tables and all with a print driver. If you're going to be using print styles, I would recommend not putting a pin table in here. I would recommend putting that in your print style. You'll have other things that you can define in here, your different papers, which is going to be useful. It's going to be used over there. See what else, line styles, font maps. So that's really the main thing to look out for, is that. Also, grayscale or true color, that can be defined in both places, but typically those are defined the same, so that's usually not a huge deal there. But usually it's the pin table that causes problems, because if you go in and expect the print driver to apply a certain pin table, and then you add the print definition to Print Organizer using a print style that applies a different pin table, then I guess the last one in is going to win. So let's go back over here. Also, the one thing I can recommend that's really important here is you don't want to reapply print styles to your print definitions. Once you've got a print definition or your sheets in Print Organizer, basically, you don't want to go into Print Organizer, select those sheets, and then reapply a print style. And that's because if the file has multiple sheets in it, like say a cross-section sheet, or maybe your typical section sheet has multiple sheets in it, or typical section file has multiple sheets in it, and then you apply a print style, you're going to get the first sheet printed over and over again for every print definition. And that's because it only scans, by default, Print Organizer will only scan the file for print borders when it's added to the PSET. It won't scan every time you print. So if you go and reapply those definitions, basically it just gives you the area of the first sheet for every following print definition in that file. And a few of the common questions we get, or I guess more recent questions I've been getting with Print Organizer, is the first one right there is what I was just talking about. Why do I only get the first sheet of my cross sections over and over when I print? And that's because you don't want to reapply that print definition. Another common one is my rasters will not print from the print dialog or in Print Organizer. And if it won't print in either one of those, if you just can't print a raster for some reason, the first thing I would check is to make sure the raster image is not on a non-plotting level. So basically, when you go into a file, let's just open up another file here and attach a raster image to it. I've got some here I've been testing with. We got some with aerials. And we'll just open up the file that the images are attached in. Basically, when you attach that image it attaches it on whatever your current level is. So in this case, it's attached on raster, let's see, raster attachment, level aggregate. So luckily, level aggregate is a printing level. Now what I would recommend doing is to set your level to, we got a level in here for image attachment DP. I would recommend to use that level and select that before you go attaching your images. And then basically any image you put in there is going to be on that level. It's a plotting level. You don't have to worry about it being a non-plotting level and going in there and not being able to print. If that was on a non-plotting level, then it wouldn't show up in the print preview. It wouldn't print in the print dialog. And I often use the single sheet printing dialog, the print dialog, to test with. Even when I'm working in Print Organizer, I'll always go back and make sure I'm getting the same results here, because they function a little bit differently in the background. Yep, and Mitch also mentioned the next place to look for that is, I said make sure that they're on a non-plotting level. If they are on a plotting level and you're still not getting those, the next thing to look at is you've got print attributes, and well, that's the transparencies. You'd have to have that checked on if you were printing transparencies. That's one thing I was going to get to. And you've also got raster options here. You've got to make sure that's checked on. If that's checked off, you see how they go away. So that's another thing to check there, is make sure your raster, print raster images option is checked on, and you'll see how that makes that available. And you also have an option similar to that in Print Organizer. So if we open up Print Organizer, and let's just open up an existing file, and we'll just look at the properties on that. You'll have options in Print Organizer too on all your print definitions. Each individual print definition, you can have an option available to print raster images. So if it's not printing and you know it's on the right level, that's where to go and check. You just right-click on the print definition, go to Properties, Advanced, and make sure that's selected as well. Okay, so there's how you can address those issues when it's not printing in both the print dialog and Print Organizer. Now I've had 2 calls recently that were kind of strange. I think it's a rare situation, but I wanted to bring it up just in case you run into it. We've had a couple people report that the raster images will print from the print dialog, but they're not printing when they go into Print Organizer. And if you confirm that that's the case, I'd recommend going in and trying to print it using the option for MicroStation with no geopack. So in that case, you could go in, open MicroStation using, say, the FDOT SS2 option with no geopack, and basically it'll load up MicroStation, but it won't load up geopack, and that's actually resolved the problem for those 2 users that reported that. There was some kind of conflict in a DGN Live or something that are I don't know, it's just causing problems with the imaging of those. So, if it won't print in either if it will print from the print dialog but not print from Print Organizer, then try those steps and just see if that fixes it. Okay, we got another question. Are those settings available to be set in the print style? And I believe he was referring to the raster options. And yes, that is available in a print style. Basically, when I right-click on a print definition and go to Properties, these are the options that I'm going to have to set in a print style. All these options along the top here, as well as a few more, but that is definitely one that'll be available in a print style. So we talked about print styles. We looked at the properties there. I didn't really talk about how you would go in and define a print style, so thanks for the reminder there. Again, you wouldn't normally do it in a design file. I'm going to do it in here just so I can show you the properties of the dialog. So there's two places you can go in and define a print style. You can select Tools, Define Print Style from the Print Organizer menu, or you can select, I believe it's Settings and Print Styles from the MicroStation menu now and select Series 3. And you'll get your Print Styles dialog. So again, normally you would be in a DGN library when you open this, and if you are, then it's going to show you all the available print styles in that DGN library. If there aren't any in there yet, basically you can click on the New option, and you'll see that the tabs along here are basically the same properties we were seeing when we was right-clicking over here. And you'll notice as we go through these tabs that it's also many of the same properties that you can set in the print dialog under the print attributes or display properties in the print dialog. So to begin with, we'll just walk through the tabs, and I'll point out the important things here. Print area, you want to set that to fence. That way you can go in and define a fence that will locate your sheet borders. Paper size, if you want to define a default paper size. I'm not getting a paper size right now because I don't have the right driver selected. So let me close this out and go back to my print dialog. See, right now I'm using the Windows printer, and like I said, you can't really define paper sizes in there. So I'm just going to go back to my PDF print style, and we'll go back and go to Settings and define print styles. Print styles. Paper sizes. It's going to make me open up Print Organizer and set it there. So I'm going to go to File, Print Organizer. I want to select which print driver to use here. So I'm just going to, in Print Organizer, if you want to define which print driver to use, right now it's using the HP 5000. Basically, you'd select File and Printer Setup, and then you would browse and define. Remember what I was saying, you can only select one print driver at a time. So this is where you would go in and change print driver. So if I wanted to print this piece set to a PDF, I would select that one and say OK. And now you notice in the status bar it's printing using the PDF. If I wanted to then print it to paper, I would just basically do the same thing. Come over here, Printer Setup, pick a driver that goes out to a printer, and then basically click the print icon again, and it would print that print set to the printer. But it's going to print everything in that print set using whichever driver is associated at the time. So now if we go to Tools and define print style, and we'll just say New, and the print area is going to be a fence. Now that I've got a print driver defined that's got paper sizes defined, so I can select my paper size. Here's where you would select the rasterized option or print to 3D or full. And the way these work, normally a checkbox has two states. It's either checked or it's not. Well, these checkboxes have three states. You have not checked, you have checked, and you have shaded. If it's not checked, that's going to force it off at print time, even if it's turned on over in your view attributes of your design file. If you have it checked, it's going to force it on at print time, even if you have it turned off over here. And if it's shaded, it's just going to use whatever your design file set up to use. So that's the 3 different states there. So you would just set these appropriately. Like I typically turn rasterized off. I try not to use that just because of the speed issues. And I'd probably just leave those others shaded like that. And on these pages, you can define as little or as much information as you want. So I'm going to leave a lot of this blank or as it is, just because the defaults are going to work fine for me. And I can go ahead and tell it I want to use, say, my just standard FDOT pin table. So I'll define my pin table here and not over in the print driver itself. That way, anytime I apply the print style, I know which pin table is going to be used. Under Advanced Workspaces and Project Workspace, that basically just lets you override and tell which workspace to use with the print style. If you leave them blank, it's going to use whatever your active workspace is. So I always leave those blank. I default that to grayscale. Of course, if it's a color driver, if you're saying an FDOT color PDF, then I would turn that to true color. Do I want to print raster images? That's where I can force that on. Do I want to print them in grayscale or not? I'll just leave those shaded so it'll be however it's set up in the file. And then the Fence tab is the important tab. This is where you define in the print style how to go in and find your sheet borders. And I want to define those from a shape. And I'll say that shape is on level plot border DP. And it'll scan currently my master file and all reference files. So, you know, if you don't use reference files, you always have your sheet borders in your files. You can check that off, and it'll only search your master file and, you know, speed up the process a little bit. If you do use reference files, I would recommend go ahead and define the name that you usually put your borders in. And of course, the you know, DOT naming convention, you could say BD.star, and it's going to find any of your border files there. Got a question, can it use logicals? I don't believe it uses logicals at this point, but it may, because typically by default in a lot of cases, the logical name is going to be the file name. But that's a good question. I'd have to go in and test that to be sure. But I used this knowing that the first 2 characters of the border files in the FDOT naming convention, that'll pick those up. I believe structures would use a different one, so I could go ahead and add that as well there. But you see how you can basically limit the search of the print borders to specific files to speed up the creation of the print definitions. And you can also tell it to create one print definition for the first matching shape, but typically you're going to want to select create one print definition for each matching shape. That way, if you've got multiple sheets in the file, like I said, the cross sections or typical sections or anything you might have multiple sheets in, you would have to have that selected to find all those sheets. So once you have that selected, you select OK there, and then it'll use those properties. And that's how it was finding those sheet borders in when I applied the print style. The next tab, the display tab, basically this is all of the different display attributes you can get over here and turn things on and off. Again, if they're shaded, it's going to use the properties over here. But some things I want to override, like I never want construction elements to print. I don't want my border to print. I don't want my fence to print. So you see, you can go in and do things like this. If you want to use your level overrides, maybe you want to force that on. If you want to use them only if it's available, then you can shade it. You don't want to print data fields. But you see what I mean. You would just go in and define the properties as you want. In Select Series 3, you got a couple new tabs here. You got one for levels and one for references. I haven't really found a real strong use for those yet. Basically, you could turn a reference off at plot time, or you could do do levels and all off. You can also use the named expressions, so you can use the dot star on things there as well. And then finally, if you did want to use this in to apply your print driver, then you could select here, pick the print driver, and let's say we're going to do a PDF with this, and then save that. So now if I come in and hit Control P and apply print style, I've got that print style available because I'm in this file, as well as all these other print styles. And okay, now this one doesn't have a border in it, so it didn't find anything there, but you see how that works there. And that's why normally you'd want to be in a DGN Live, because now if I go to another file, you'll notice that one was named a settings apply print style. You'll notice that one was named new print style. So if I go back a file to one that had sheets in it and go to settings, apply print style, well, that's not available in here. And that's because I created it in that DGN and not in a DGN Live that's getting loaded. So you can see, where, like I said, that's when people first start using print styles and print organizer. That's a common issue. Okay, so I think we hit on all the questions there. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Next, we want to get into, had one more question pop in here. When I added a new paper size and save, reloaded in the print dialog, it doesn't show the new paper size. Well, let's just go in and look at that real quick before we move on then. So if I'm in the print dialog, oops, I hit Windows instead of Control. Let's don't save this. So Control P, File, Edit Printer Driver Configuration, paper sizes. So we've got these two paper sizes. If I add a new one, and we'll just say letter, and we'll say 11 by 8.5. Oops, that's a ladder. And you could also say this is the default print size or not. I usually set that to the tabloid, so I'm just going to say OK there. You could also go in and define margins, and it would squeeze things in too. You could use that to adjust scales and stuff as well. So I'll save that. I'll do a file save. I'll do a close this. Then we'll do a file reload printer driver configuration. And anytime you're editing print drivers, you'll want to go in and reload that driver to read in the latest settings. And now I've got 36 by 24, 11 by 17 in letter. So you'll just want to make sure that the one you're editing is the one that's defined there when you're doing that. Okay, so back to, oops, let me back up a couple here. Back to the PowerPoint. So Sheet Navigator. We've talked about this in a couple of the other sessions, but we're just wanting to get the information out there. Sheet Navigator also has the ability to generate print organizer presets from the project index. So basically, if you've got a project index in Sheet Navigator, you would just select File, Open Project Index, or even if you're just wanting the component index, say you want just the signing plans, you can open just the component index. Once you have the index selected, it will enable the generate print set option, and then you could select that, and it's going to automatically generate a PSET and open print organizer based on the information defined in Sheet Navigator. You also have the ability in Sheet Navigator to define which print styles you want to use in the I guess the sheet properties. So on the single sheet edit dialog, you've probably noticed there's a print styles option drop down available. You would select the sheet, select the print style, and then save that. Or let's say you want to go in and apply a print style to all of your plan sheets at once. You can use the multi-sheet option. Go and select all your plan sheets, you know, and then under the renumbering or the multi-sheet edit process, just check on print styles there, select the print style you want and apply, and it'll go through and apply that print style to all your plan sheets. And that's really it. So let's go in and look at Sheet Navigator real quick. So let me just open up Sheet Navigator. I'm just going to use the button for it. And like I said, you'll see on this one, there's not any print styles applied on either of these sheets. So I could go in and say I want to do an FDOT PDF on that one, and yes, and see it's going to save that. And we'll do an FDOT PDF on that one and save that one. And so if we go to, let's just go ahead and open up the project index. You can see how simple it is to apply a print style just on the single sheet. If we go in and look at, open up our project index, because we've got to have it open to access multi-sheet editing. We'll just say renumber multi-sheet edit. Say OK, and now from here, like on all my plan sheets, if I wanted to gray out my topo and all, right now I've got a few defined to PDF. I want to override those, and then I can just go in and set properties on those to, let's say I don't want to insert a placeholder, and we want to edit the selected sheets. Again, I can select print style. And with those, I want to do the FDO PDF or the FDOT PDF, and I want to use the gray existing pin table. That's basically what that naming convention is telling me. It's going to use the PDF driver and the gray existing pin table. And then I'll apply that, and it'll go through and, oh, well, I've got to go in and finish and apply those changes. And yes, it's going to go in and basically open up and apply that print style to all of those sheet properties. And the reason why it's opening it up is because you noticed when you applied those, it was red. So like if I go to sheet edit here, and let's just close this for a minute. If I go to sheet edit, you see it's red. That means there's not a field in the sheet border to fill in with that property. So it's actually tagging that attribute to a point on the border. And that's why, since it's not a property in there, you've got to, that's why it shows up red and why you have to go through and let it basically process all of those. So now if we go to open the project index, you'll notice now it's got the gray existing applied to all of those. And if I select File and Generate Print Set, and we'll just call this webinar. And it's going to go in and basically generate a print set based on the information it finds in the project index. So it automatically creates folders for each of my components. I've got one for roadway, one for signing. If I had other components, it would just keep listing those in there. And then if I expand those components, it's got all of the sheets available in those components listed. If we go up to roadway, and look at our plan sheets, let's just go back up here and look at them this way. If we look at our plan sheets, you'll notice now they've got the FDOT gray existing applied where the others have the FDOT TBL. And I did the same thing with my cross sections. I went in and applied a print style to those to use the excess pin table, which speeds up the cross section printing. So you can kind of see how that works. Now we are still working on this, and you'll notice that a few of these are out of order, and that's, in this case, it's because this is a really old project, and you'll notice that they've got multiple sheets in the same design file. Like this is, they put the general notes in the summary of quantities file, so it's throwing the order off. Usually the general notes would be in its own file. So I can just, even if it brings them in and puts them in the wrong order, I can just drag that order around and adjust it once I get over here. And you can see it's still a lot quicker and easier, and you know, it just gives you a better look. If I were to manually add those plan sheets to a piece set, we'll just add this file. I can select File, Add Current or Add Active Files to Set, and here's where I can go in and apply the print style when I add it. And I'll just say FDOT PDF here and say OK. So when I add these, and it's going in and scanning the file for those sheet borders. But when I add those, you'll notice it just gives me the file name and really no more information. I don't know what sheet number it is. I don't know what order it is. I'd have to go in, do a print preview, figure out what sheet it is, and then get it in the right order that way. So that's the power of using it through Sheet Navigator. I won't need those, so I'm just going to go ahead and select those two and delete that. And now let's say once we get it in here, I decided I didn't want to use that pin table. Again, once you get it in here, it's easy to override any of those. So I can say I really wanted to use for all my plan sheets. I can select Properties. I can come here and say I really wanted to use just the standard FDOT TBL for those as well, and say OK. And it's just that easy. I can reapply all of those. So you can see how you can go in, you can manage your print styles in Sheet Navigator. It will basically rough in your piece set for you. You can go in and customize your piece set to however you want. And the way a piece set works is it's kind of in a hierarchical format. So if I click here and say print or print preview, it's going to give me just that one. If I click here and say print or print preview, it's going to build that whole set, and it's going to build it in the order that they're displayed in here. So that's why it's important to get those ordered in here, and why it's really handy to be able to see your sheet numbers listed in Print Organizer. And then I could just go through and select any one of those. If I wanted to see what's on sheet 17, I know exactly where it's at. So that really brings a lot more power to Print Organizer. Okay, so we've got a few more questions coming in. We'll try to answer some of these. Sometimes I get sheets showing up multiple times, and one has the word compressed after the name. Sometimes you can get, if you're adding files, especially if you're adding files that have multiple models, it's going to try by default to add a print definition for each model in there, unless you override that. So that could be one reason why you get extra models in there. haven't seen one with the word compressed after it, so I'd have to see that in particular to see, to investigate and see what's going on with that. Any issues with using the same PLT CFG file for all sheets? Well, that's what I was saying earlier, is you got to be sure that the same PLT CFG file will work for all your sheets. And where that really comes into effect is with your key sheets, because I know some people want to see a real, I guess, pretty shaded map or whatever on their plans. And the only way to do that is really to use either the key sheet thing, driver in pen table, or to use a color print driver and a pen table that will override everything else in your key sheet to black. And if you do that, then you're going to have issues with everything else. If you use just the standard FDOT TBL on there, that should be enabled. I guess this one I don't even have in there. That should have a settings in the pen table that will turn off the filled shapes. That way you're still seeing your map, you're still seeing your roads, you're still seeing your signs. Basically you have a location map, which is the purpose. And it will print with everything else in there. Otherwise you're going to have to print everything. You'd have to take this out, print everything else using these settings in this print driver, and then have another one for your key sheet, and then go use Adobe Acrobat Professional to add the key sheet back into your print set. See, so that's why I was pointing out how it's important to get all those working with a single print driver, even if you have to customize a pen table to do that. Okay, so the next question, in Print Organizer, is there a way to speed up cross sections when printing over 100 sheets in a 500 sheet set? Yeah, that's really important. That's why I pointed out here that you'll want to use you got two options. You can use the cross section TBL, the excess TBL, or you can use no pen table. You could just take that out altogether, and I could edit it here, as well as I could go to the properties and edit it, or I can just click and edit it here by double clicking on that and deleting, and oops, I want to delete that, and double click there and delete that. So either one of those options will speed up your cross sections dramatically. And the reason why that is the way pen tables work is, if we go in and look at a pen table, let me just open that up and I can explain it a little better. So cancel that. I want to go to my regular print dialog. I want to go to attach a pen table, and we'll pick just the standard FDOT pen table. And now we'll edit that pen table. So if I want to edit a pen table, basically I can attach it, then I can go to resymbolize, edit pen table. And what seems to be slowing down the cross section so much, like if you use the FDOT TBL, is if you have anything in this field, basically it is reloading all of the FDOT level libraries for every reference. So in your case here, you've got 100 cross-section sheets. You've probably got 4 or 5 sections per sheet, so you've got 400 or 500 cross-sections. And that means it's having to load all the level libraries 500 times every time it prints. It's just an inefficient method they use in the background for that. So the only way to get around that is to not use a pen table, or you can use this pen table I had here. And the way I created that, I couldn't create that pen table in the pen table editor. I had to go out and go to, in my case, I've got a workstation here, so I'll go to my FDOT SS2 directory, resources, plot, and that's where the pin tables are at. Cancel that. And let's just make a copy of this and I'll show you an example. So we'll edit this with Notepad. And these are just ASCII text files. So basically all those sections you've seen, remember you've seen guide sign fill, you've seen construction off, you've seen key maps. Basically I went in and deleted all of those. So it doesn't have any sections in there. And then I just save that. We'll go ahead and close and save. And now that pin table without any of those sections would speed up cross-section printing. So that's kind of the background behind that. I created a print style in the print preparations DGN lib. The styles show up in the print dialogues apply print styles area, but they do not show up in print organizer. Did I use the wrong DGN lib? I would probably recommend creating the print styles in your own DGN lib rather than like print preparations that gets delivered with MicroStation and all that. Excuse me. Mainly just because then you have control over it. You don't have to worry about it getting overwritten with future updates or patches that Bentley might put out. And you also have control over using the config files over when and where that DGN lib is attached. I would have expected, personally, I'd have to go in and test it, but I would have expected that if you're seeing the print style in the print dialog, you should be seeing it as well in Print Organizer. And the final question we have here that's unanswered is, once a pset is created and you have to go back and edit a file, does the pset reflect the change? And the answer to that is yes. Basically, in the pset, what the print definitions do is it's basically defining the area in the file to print. The only time that wouldn't be the case is, for example, if you had gone in and you got Print Organizer open and you got all this defined, and maybe you're editing some stuff in the file and then go to print it, it might not go and reread that file. And that's why Bentley recommends that anytime you're wanting to print a pset, to open a file that doesn't have any sheets in it, or at least open a different file when you print. So if I had made a bunch of changes in here and I was fixing to print, I should really go ahead and open up another file. I go into my pattern file, there's no sheet in there, and that's going to force it to reopen MicroStation and reread the latest I guess the latest symbology or line work or whatever is defined in that print area that's saved in the print definition. So even just doing that and coming back would force that to happen. Okay, well, it looks like we've got all the questions answered here. One more just popped in, a general question. This obviously doesn't have anything really to do with plotting, but it's getting to be a more common question. When will FDOT SS3 require a priority build for MicroStation or Geopack, or can we use the latest versions available? Unless we find a bug or something that's critical and requires a priority build, we will use the latest versions available on select. We really try to use those unless there's just some bug that's going to drastically affect production. And you know, that'll be out later this summer, so I don't really have a hard and fast date. That's what I'm starting to get emails on now. I don't really have a hard and fast date. It's really going to depend on just how things kind of fall together and what kind of workflows we get worked out. So just keep your eye out. Sometime this summer we hope to get it out. All right, well, that's it for the webinar. If you got any other questions, like I showed on the last PowerPoint slide there, you can email those to ecso.support@dot.state.fl.us. You could also email them to me. I just recommend this because this comes to several of us here in the office, and if I'm not available, somebody else could probably pick it up and answer that for you. Or you can post questions to our community site, and I've provided a link here below. So y'all have a good day, and we'll see you again next week.